It's Muppeturgy, and it's time for a very problematic episode about the Rudolf Nureyev episode of The Muppet Show. I don't know if our episode will be problematic, but I think, well, you'll see.
To be determined.
No promises.
Anyway, hi everyone. Welcome back. I'm David Levy. Here with me today are
Christy Bauer,
Michal Richardson,
Adam Grossworth.
I have the feeling that we have perhaps misunderstood the question.
This is the most minor of corrections, but, we are pedants here. In the Madeline Kahn episode, I thought I spotted Ma Otter in the audience, but then in a subsequent episode, Miss Mousy got a feature, and I realized that had been Miss Mousy in the audience. We regret the error. This week, we are talking about Season 2, Episode 13. It was produced the week of October 18th, 1977, and it aired in New York on January 23rd, 1978, and the same week in the UK. It was episode 14 in the air order, right between Zero Mostel and Judy Collins. Tonight's NBC movie opposite football was The Dark Secret of Harvest Home, starring Bette Davis in a TV movie.
Huh.
Okay.
On CBS, following The Muppet Show in most markets, You're a Good Sport, Charlie Brown, which was a rerun, so it aired more than once, but I have fully never heard of this.
Oh, we had that. I think we had a VHS of it.
Well, after the football one, I'm definitely not going to watch this, but Charlie is talked into entering a charity motocross race, is the TV guide description.
He wears a pumpkin for a helmet.
I'll take your word for it. That was followed by Ricky Tikki Tavi, also a rerun. And over on ABC, Roots 1 year later, a documentary about the impact of Roots 1 year later.
The question is, are you going to find out what the dark secret of Harvest Home is?
I actually might. I might track that down and watch it. I'll look it up while David's doing the guest star bio to see if it's streaming anywhere. It's about a couple from New York who moves to the country and finds a dark and ritualistic secret. So, with Bette Davis, yeah, I might.
The secret is Bette Davis.
No, I think she's the New York couple, but I'm not sure.
Oh, really? I just assumed that she was like the witch or something.
Well, stay tuned.
Harvest Home to me sounds like a catalog that sells candles.
I was about to say candle scent. Yeah, absolutely. That's the dark secret. They're making candles.
To introduce our guest star, that's what I'm here to do. So it really makes me happy to introduce to you
Rudolf Nureyev, ballet dancer, choreographer, Soviet defector. Born in 1938 to a Muslim Tartar family in the Soviet Union, young Rudolf fell in love with dance early on. He trained at a local school and toured with a local company, but the post-war disruptions to Soviet life left him unable to enter a major ballet school until 1955 when he was 17 years old, which is really quite late for someone who goes on to have the kind of career he had. He quickly rose in the ranks of the Kirov Ballet and soon became known as one of the Soviet Union's best dancers. Before long, he was under the watchful eye of the KGB, suspicious of his relationships with foreigners and his trips to gay bars while performing in Paris. In some ways, they were right to be suspicious. In 1961, he defected, and within a week, he joined the Grand Ballet du Marquis de Cueva. Incidentally, he was sort of the first major celebrity defection, and it kind of kicked off a wave of those. So historically, that was pretty important. While on tour in Denmark, he met and fell in love with Danish ballet dancer Erik Brun. The two would remain a couple, somewhat on again, off again, until Erik's death in 1986. In the 1960s, Rudolf joined the Royal Ballet, and he became an international superstar, and his star further rose when he paired with prima ballerina Dame Margot Fonteyn. In the 1970s, he made many appearances with the National Ballet of Canada and the American Ballet Theatre, so by the time he was on The Muppet Show, North American audiences had ample opportunities to see him on stage. Of course, he had also appeared on his share of variety shows and talk shows, as well as a handful of movies. He was also part of 70s celebrity culture, socializing with the likes of Liza Minnelli, Gore Vidal, and Andy Warhol at Studio 54 and beyond, until he eventually grew tired of that scene. In 1982, he was granted Austrian citizenship, ending 2 decades of statelessness since he defected from the USSR. In 1983, he became the head of the Paris Opera Ballet, where he stayed until 1989. In 1987, he was finally allowed back into Russia by Mikhail Gorbachev in order to visit his dying mother. In 1989, he finally performed there in Leningrad. That same year, he started a North American tour of The King and I, which I did not see, but I remember seeing a lot of television commercials for. And it was kind of a big deal at the time because it was the tour that reclaimed the show after a generation of Yul Brynner doing every single production.
I'm just going to say this now instead of later. He is not a natural actor.
Well, The King and I doesn't really call for natural acting.
I mean,
in that role.
No, and yet.
Right. Perhaps, by this would have been more than a decade later.
Sure.
Maybe
Maybe he got some coaching.
By this point, he had been living with HIV for a number of years, and his health took a turn for the worse in the early 90s. He died in January of 1993 at the age of 54. I think it's hard to understand the impact for those of us who didn't live through his heyday, but he's credited as really elevating the role of the male dancer in ballet and bridging the gap between ballet and modern dance, a crossover that's pretty common today but was very rare in the 1960s. Wikipedia describes him as almost a mirror image of Gene Kelly, who brought balletic influence into popular modern dance. Nureyev returned the favor to bring modern dance influence into ballet. Do any of you have sort of previous impressions of Nureyev?
I don't, but I mean, just to follow on what you were just saying, like something I found so interesting about the way he's treated in the episode, not even him really, but like one of the jokes is, we'll get to it, but like Sam is so excited that he's coming. And then like one of the jokes is he's my favorite opera singer. And just the idea of that landing with an audience now, with the Muppet Show audience, I'm trying to think of like an equivalently famous ballet dancer to this kind of mass audience today. And I don't think they quite exist.
I don't think we have that.
Right. And so that's
certainly not a male dancer.
Yeah. Even a female. I mean, like somebody like Misty Copeland, like who is famous, but not a household name. Right.
Like, I don't think my dad, who, watches a lot of TV and is like up on pop culture, I don't think he knows who Misty Copeland is.
Right. And I'm pretty with it. And I barely, like, I'm proud of myself for pulling the name Misty Copeland just now. So like,
I mean, I know her because I saw her on Broadway and On the Town.
Right. So yeah, I think like that's just notable to me. And I thought about watching the episode, and then I was struck by it just now listening to the bio.
Yeah, Nureyev is a name that prior to watching this episode for our podcast was purely anecdotal history to me. Like, I could sort of vaguely conjure in my mind what he looked like, but like, he's one of those names like Caruso is like somebody who's like held up as a like historical epitome of a particular artist. So it was a wild experience to see a historical figure in my mind very much humanized.
And it's funny, I think for us, we probably have the awareness of Mikhail Baryshnikov that people 10 years older than us, or certainly 20 years older than us, had of Nureyev. And I think Baryshnikov is probably the last of the kind of crossover famous ballet dancers.
Important Dark Secret of Harvest Home update before we get things started. Betty Davis played Widow Fortune, so you were right, David. It also featured Rosanna Arquette, Donald Pleasance, Tracy Gold of Growing Pains later fame, and Renee Auberjonois, among others. It is not streaming. The DVD is not available on Amazon.com or either the New York Public Library or Queens Library. So sadly, we will not be watching it.
A trip to the Paley Center it is.
If anyone has a lead on where I can watch The Dark Secret of Harvest House, please let me know. Why don't you get me started? Michal, we know you found it problematic. What else did you think of this episode?
I thought this was a journey. It made me feel a lot of feelings. If you can set aside the boy howdy, this was made in another era feelings, then all the other feelings were pretty good. I mean, yeah, I love that as much as the Muppets' whole shtick in this episode is that they're trying to rise to meet the cultural level of Rudolf Nureyev, he's responding by being perfectly happy to play in their playground and be part of the troupe and play along with all their gags. It's a good time, other than the stuff that is not.
I love this episode. There are problematic things. We're going to talk about them. I will be critical of them, but the backstage and the onstage are completely integrated. Rudolf Nureyev is, I mean, not only game, I think he was actually really, really driving the bus in terms of what he's doing here. And even at its most awkward, I am so weirdly charmed by like everything, except for something that is not problematic that I just actually dislike. So we'll get to it. I won't spoil it. But yeah, I don't know. I love it.
Place your bets.
It's one of my favorites so far, which was actually a surprise. David?
I don't think I saw this as a child, because I think if I had seen this as a child, it would have been deeply formative for me. We'll talk about why later. As anyone who's been paying attention this season has probably figured out, I have quickly become very much a fan of the episodes that are directed by Philip Casson. This is one of them. I just think he brings a more inventive eye to how to shoot the Muppets and therefore like what we can do with them. And I think that helps elevate this episode quite a bit. So I don't think it's one of my all-time favorites, but it was a good time. You know, whatever misgivings we have about some particular choices.
And not just shooting the Muppets, but also filming ballet, which is a whole other art and a whole other direction to have to orient yourself to. Showing Rudolf Nureyev doing ballet on a properly sized stage with another dancer, they knew how to film that too and make it look exciting and interesting.
I mean, we'll get to this, but like the challenge, having talked about Happy Feet, in which we don't see his feet, like shooting someone actually tap dancing and seeing their feet while shooting Muppets who have no feet. Like, there's a lot going on here. It's really,
Wait, Muppets don't have feet?
What? I mean, sometimes they do, but like shooting dance well is really hard. Shooting dance well when you're combining an actual dancer and puppets is, I would imagine, even harder. And it is done here. That's where I'm going with that. Anyway, Christy, what did you think of this episode?
This might be my favorite of the season so far.
Yay.
Yeah.
Someone agrees with me.
Oh, 100%. It's somehow high concept and low concept at the same time. And that's so satisfying to me. And also, like, Nureyev's willingness to look doofy is so shocking. And it's just something to behold. It reminds me of what I usually tell people when they ask about my experiences with yoga. So, okay. So I love yoga. I've done yoga for several years at this point. I am spectacularly mediocre at best at yoga. I look real goofy doing it. But the magic of yoga for me is that it doesn't matter. Like I see as much benefit from the doing it as a yoga master does, because I bother to show up and enjoy myself. And I feel like that's exactly what Nureyev is doing. Like it's the ultimate template for a Muppet Show guest. You show up, you do something weird, and it pays off. You might look like a ding-dang fool, but it pays off. So, yeah, I'm a big fan.
Do we feel like he asked to look doofy? Like, that's my impression, is that he came in and was like, I don't want to do ballet, or I want to do ballet, like, as comedy, right? Like, that's the impression.
I assume so.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly he asked to dance with Miss Piggy, which I imagine he was not picturing being especially balletic.
Right. All right, well, let's get into it.
Rudolf Nureyev? 15 seconds, Mr. Nureyev. Uh-huh. I knew he was too smart to show up.
Scooter gives a little sideways grimace to the camera, which I didn't even know that puppet could do, but it's beautiful. There's no movement on the yay evolution front at the beginning of the episode, but we get a little treat at the end.
So let us have a warm thank you for our very special guest star, the incomparable Rudolf Nureyev!
It's even cuter because Kermit's wearing a tiny top hat that's perched on the back of his head.
I love the tiny top hat.
It's so cute. And it's not gravity holding it on. It must be a lot of Velcro and hope. I don't know. Statler and Waldorf in the opening sing along with the theme song.
It's time to get things started.
Everybody's so happy to be here this episode. Gonzo and his trumpet, meanwhile, again attempt to inflate this little green balloon. And this time Gonzo succeeds and he inflates this little 3-tiered balloon into a little green snowman thing, or maybe into a little snowman with a boob for a head.
Or just a balloon.
Or, I mean, dancer's choice.
The balloon also keeps inflating on its own. Like, after he stops blowing into the trumpet, the balloon keeps going.
Magic.
This is the same balloon that we saw last week, I think, that didn't inflate, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Muppet Show backstage.
Backstage this week, Sam the Eagle is incredibly enthusiastic about finally getting some culture at last onto the Muppet Show.
to have the brilliant, talented Rudolf Nureyev on our show. He's my favorite opera singer.
Tonight's guest star is one of the world's great masters of ballet, Mr. Rudolf Nureyev.
What? Are you sure it's ballet, not opera?
Positive.
6 of one, half dozen the other. Culture is culture. Go ahead.
But here to get things started is Dr. Teeth and the electric...
What, Dr. Teeth?
Sam, I know I promised you a very cultural show, but don't worry. You see, they're playing a minuet, and they have promised to be very classy.
Can't go wrong with a minuet. Sam is not only enthusiastic, he has decorated backstage. There are garlands and bouquets everywhere. Everyone is wearing tuxes and white ties, and Sam is lining people up for inspection and making sure everyone is acting with dignity and that Kermit has washed his flippers. And every time something remotely uncultural happens, Sam engages his appalled mode. So when a stray human enters in his street clothes, Sam is not having it, and he throws the guy out.
Remember, when Mr. Nureyev arrives, we must be dignified. We must be respectful.
Hey, guys. I'm here.
Not for long, you are not. We are waiting for Mr. Nureyev. I'll handle this. Get out of there, you freak. You hit me. You weirdo. Get out. Move. Get a haircut. Who do these punk kids think they are?
That one thinks he's Rudolf Nureyev.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe his outfit.
Fabulous.
Sure. He looks very stylish. He also unzips this little sideways jacket and then reveals a sweater underneath, but it looks like he's getting into his Spider-Man costume.
It read to me, and I think this is also how it's described at the Muppet Wiki, maybe, but maybe I'm making that up. It read to me as a motorcycle outfit, and then I realized the second time I watched it, he is neither wearing nor carrying a helmet. He has like a really cute little cap on, but I guess also it's the 70s. Maybe he just wasn't wearing a helmet. He's also carrying like a crumpled up brown paper bag, so I don't know what that was meant to be or indicate.
That's his dance belt.
Right. So I don't know why I just immediately went to motorcycle from it. It's not leather.
It has that. It is leather, isn't it?
Is it? Maybe it's not black leather.
Right. No, I think it's like a brown leather. It gives off that sort of like mod quality of the 70s.
Right.
It's slim cut with angles. It's very hot.
Yeah. And like obviously ballet dancers ride motorcycles. Hasn't Sam seen Center Stage? Best movie ever made.
Fortunately for Sam, Rudolf Nureyev doesn't seem to hold grudges. And unfortunately for Sam, Nureyev is only too pleased to play to the Muppet Show's idea of culture.
And what ballet, may I ask, is the incomparable Mr. Nureyev going to perform?
Swine Lake.
Culture. Yes, culture. Dignity at last. Swine Lake?
Ladies and gentlemen, in the classic ballet Swine Lake, a beautiful princess has been turned into a pig by the wicked magician Trichinosis. Unfortunately, the handsome prince, there's a handsome prince in this too, the handsome prince hasn't heard about the change.
If you've seen anything about this episode, you've probably seen a photo of this bit. This is where Rudolf Nureyev dances with a full-body pig puppet in a tender pork de dos. We will have lots to say about this number later. At the end of the episode, even though he's already apologized a couple times, Sam will find Nureyev another couple of times to apologize. So here he's found him in the dressing room.
I just want to apologize for the disgusting things the frog has forced you to do on this show.
The frog did not force him.
The frog didn't force me.
What?
No, I wanted to do them. And it was fun.
I can't believe that I'm speaking to the real Rudolf Nureyev.
Does that mean you're going to throw me out again?
While they've been talking, Nureyev has been changing behind the pink divider in the dressing room, and then when he emerges, he's all dolled up in a tux, and he tap dances us into the finale, which horrifies Sam, even though he has also forced everyone to wear tuxes, so now they all match. But I guess Sam holds ballet dancers to a higher standard, dance belt or bust.
I mean, I don't think it's about the outfit. I think it's about the style of dance.
Well, it is, but he actually reacts to the outfit before he has any idea what's coming. I mean, he also is reacting to Nureyev saying that he had fun. I don't want to go too deep into this, but right, there's this. This is, I think, the most that we've seen of Sam ever, right, so far, and it is kind of an interesting character study of Sam, where right he's faking the whole thing, right? Like he has,
he don't know shit,
right? He literally knows nothing, including. He has this vision of what a ballet dancer should be. And like, of course there are ballets that are done in tuxes, in sailor suits, in like whatever. I know almost nothing about ballet and I know that. So, I think he's like, oh, finally you're going to properly dance. And he comes out in a tux. And that alone is shocking to Sam because he actually doesn't have any fucking idea what he's talking about. And I think that's actually, if they've given it this much thought, it's actually a great character beat, and I really like it.
It's funny, too, because according to Wikipedia, there was a memorable incident relatively early in Nureyev's career where he was upset because he was performing in a ballet of Don Quixote where customarily his character would wear pants instead of tights, and he wanted to wear tights, and he refused to go on for 40 minutes until they let him dance in tights. Huh. Although actually, apparently he lost that battle, and after 40 minutes, they convinced him to go on in pants. But then in future performances, they allowed him to wear the tights.
Well,
I don't know, man. Artists are crazy.
What a hill to die on. Let's hear Sam's last interaction of the episode with Rudolf Nureyev.
This has been a very different experience for me.
Mr. Nureyev, I just want you to know that I am sorry.
You are sorry you threw me out?
No, I'm sorry I ever let you back in. This has been shocking.
Oh, cool it, Baldy.
Again, not a natural actor, but I do enjoy that.
Before we say goodbye to talking about this sequence, we really need to address Sam's sleeveless tuxedo.
Yes. He has very high standards for everybody else, and also his tuxedo is a muscle shirt.
It's very Chippendales.
His wings could go into sleeves.
Yeah, or covered with a jacket.
Or a cape.
Not impossible. Or
a
yeah,
cape.
even better.
Yeah.
It's just weird for someone so concerned with everyone else's appearance that he does look like he's about to go work a bachelorette party.
I wonder if they tried and it looked super weird because of the shape the sleeves would have to be. I mean, a cape is a great idea. But I'm trying to like imagine what the sleeves would look like, and I bet it looked really funky.
So this week we have music, both highbrow and lowbrow, as befits an evening of quote-unquote culture. We start very firmly in the classical realm.
Hey, what's this bummer called again?
Minuet G major.
They ought to send it back to the miners.
Yeah, if I knew we were going to do this, I'd have just stayed home and sent in my soup. Animal's not going to make it, man.
Well, I think he's going to freak.
If he goes, I go with him.
Hey, it's a breakout!
Yeah. So this is, they say minuet in G major. It's actually minuet in A major from Luigi Boccherini's String Quartet in E. It's the third movement. And Luigi Boccherini was born in 1743, so extreme shout out to the public domain. He was Italian. He was known as the greatest cellist in Europe in his time. And he did the bulk of his work composing music for the royal court of Spain. Haters tend to call him Haydn's wife because of similarities in their work, which seems both rude and misogynistic, but sure. And yeah, if this piece sounds familiar, it's because it's used very stereotypically as this is what a snooty piece of music sounds like in movies. I found a piece about that phenomenon in the Harvard Crimson from 2013 called The Most Used and Abused Classical Pieces, written by Will Holub Mormon. And he said, poor Boccherini, when he wrote the celebrated Minuet back in 1771, how could he have known that it would turn into the go-to piece for directors looking to make fun of classical music? You can hear the Minuet all over the place, as Ferris Bueller walks into a snooty Chicago restaurant, in Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, and in both adaptations of The Lady Killers. It's even in D3, The Mighty Ducks, for God's sake. However, the song is brilliantly utilized in the form of a Nigel Tufnell guitar solo at the end of Heavy Duty, and This Is Spinal Tap, the first and last time Boccherini gets turned up to 11.
I'm glad you read that sentence. Thank you.
Yeah, I had never encountered the name Luigi Boccherini before, and then as I dug, I'm like, oh, it's because it's a trope. It's a joke. Also, we'll hear this piece of music again in season 5.
Is this a piece that also gets played in like the classical repertoire, or is it only a joke now?
I'm not sure. I mean, I would assume so because it hasn't like fallen into total obscurity. But I do think it appears more in this jokey context than it does in, celebrations of music.
It feels like maybe something that would be taught.
Yeah.
Right? Like a school piece as opposed to a philharmonic piece. I have no idea.
I just think this is an excellent deployment of the mayhem.
It's so funny.
I love that it gives them an opportunity to talk and show their personalities, but also I think the piece really works in their style, both before and after Animal kicks in. Big fan.
It's musically interesting, but God, that point when Floyd says, Animal's not going to make it, man, and they just like zoom in on Animal's face. Kills me. I love it so much.
And I love that. Should have sent it back to the miners. I think that's my favorite line of the week.
The older I get, the more I appreciate good music.
Yeah, what's that got to do with what we just heard?
Nothing. Just thought I'd mention it.
So our foray into high art continues with some Mozart.
Mi fa beata massetto. Io così rotto e forte. Presto non son più forte, non son più forte, non son più forte.
Christy, we actually don't need you this week. Kermit took care of this for us.
Now, in keeping with our tone of culture and classicism, and to kill time while we see if we still have a guest star, we proudly present the love duet from the third act of The Barber of der Fledermaus by Giuseppe Wagner, or Giuseppe Wagner, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Can I share my deep embarrassment that the first time I watched this, not only did I not recognize it as real opera, I didn't recognize it as real Italian. I was like, are they just like making up gibberish words? And why that is doubly embarrassing is not only did I study Italian in college, but I also produced Don Giovanni or the operatic stage in college. So no, I don't know, guys.
Okay, not as embarrassing, but I like Sam, I actually took him at his word that it was at least Die Fledermaus. It is not.
It is not. No.
I should have clued into the fact that he says the Barber of Die Fledermaus, which I know enough to know is not a thing, but still.
Yeah, none of the words that came out of Kermit's mouth were correct.
No.
So this is from Mozart's opera Don Giovanni from 1787. A lot of music from the 1700s this week. And it's a duet between Don Giovanni and Zerlina. It's sort of like a seduction duet. And I had never seen Don Giovanni. I'm not an opera person. I will own that. Which is funny because it's like a musical theater composer. So you would think that it's like, oh, it's a close cousin. Yeah, no, it's not.
They're not the same.
Not for me. Not for me.
Nor I.
But I did learn that there is a character named Donna Elvira in Don Giovanni, and my dog's name is Elvira, so that was exciting for me.
And now she has a title.
She is a lady of the stage.
I'm a little disappointed that they didn't go with a mouse or a moose joke, or bring back the bat from the Judy Collins episode, because Fledermaus, in fact, means bat. But I cannot be mad about these pigs.
Oh, yeah.
And a really impressive vocal performance from Frank Oz.
Oh, yeah.
Which is particularly amazing because he doesn't always carry a tune so well as Piggy, as we'll hear later in this episode. And in particular, when he has to sing in her highest register, like there's that note in the Muppet movie, that one note in Never Before, Never Again, that just is like fingernails on a chalkboard. But at least now hearing this, I know that, okay, maybe that was actually a comedic choice and not just Paul Williams wrote a song that Frank Oz couldn't sing.
It's also worth noting that even though they're singing a duet from Don Giovanni, they are dressed in the like Viking regalia of Wagner's Ring Cycle. So like everything about this is like stereotyping, faking it till you make it. Like nobody knows what they're doing as far as the high culture portion of this show goes this week, and it's delightful.
And I think we're going to see these costumes again too.
I would hope so.
There's a Viking pig number in our future, I believe. So that's something to look forward to.
Well, there's definitely a very famous Viking pig number in season 5.
Yes.
Yes, all that is coming. The conceit of this number is that Piggy and Link are trying to upstage each other and then get yoinked off the stage, not with a cane this time, but they get hoisted up by a giant magnet, at which point you can see all of Link's toes because he's not wearing shoes and he has people feet. Sorry.
Not that hooves on a Muppet Pig would be better. I don't know. I don't know what I want out of Muppet Pig feet. I know what I want out of Muppet Pig feet. I want to never see them and never think about them.
I mean, we've discussed Piggy's shoes before, so it does make sense that they would have humanoid feet. Because how else would she wear those?
Yeah, I wasn't planning to think about.
I don't want to
Link's
think
feet.
about it. I know that she can roller skate, but I don't want to think about what her feet look like inside those roller skates.
Inside Gregory Hines' roller skates, no less.
And I will say again, how many teats?
Nope.
Nope.
You know, there's nothing like grand opera.
Yep, and that was nothing like it.
Oh!
I'm with you, fellas. We promised that we would talk about the balletic performance of this episode, and it is Swine Lake, or rather Swan Lake, as performed by a human and pig.
Just while we're still in music, this synth situation is wild.
It's the 70s, man.
I know.
Yeah, it's very Swan Lake on ice. But the music is Tchaikovsky. It's from 1877. Yeah, I didn't find anything particularly notable or exciting about the music.
I mean, it's Swan Lake, right?
It's Swan Lake, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
even if you don't know anything about ballet, like, it's Swan Lake.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the puppet.
Yeah.
Nureyev came into this and really wanted to dance with Miss Piggy. And the Muppet folks were like, that's not really possible, at least not in the classical ballet sense. So the compromise was they built this full body pig puppet, who is not Miss Piggy, but a different pig, and which is great. And I actually, there's a lot that I really like about this number, but the bummer of this number, and I think we all agree because we've discussed it off mic, is that, you know, the joke of it is he's being pursued by a pig, right? I mean, in Swan Lake, right? Like she turns into a swan, and a human and a swan, and now it's a human and a pig. But what that turns into in practicality is an extended fat joke, and that doesn't feel great. And a lot of the comedy just sort of comes from like doing ballet stuff when the ballerina is much larger than the male partner, and you know there's lifts and there's the pig gets thrown around and like it
she lands on top of him.
Yeah,
That's the joke.
Like, and it's a pig, so it's sort of okay, but it's still ultimately like we all understand that it's a fat joke, and that's the part that I don't like.
Yeah,
But I
it's
think we
pretty
all know.
clear, and it's text. It's not subtext.
No,
like
yeah.
he looks over and it's like, oh no, this ballerina is too big.
Yeah.
And like literally tosses her away several times.
Yeah, and also has the face of a literal pig. Like I could be a little generous to it, but it's still, ugh.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
And yet, the pig, I don't know if it's fair to call it a puppet because it's really a costume.
Although there are times it's a similar bit to the Rita Moreno episode where there are times when there's no one in the costume and it is treated as a puppet.
But the face doesn't have any puppetry elements to it in a way
true.
that like Big Bird is a costume, but also a puppet.
Right.
This is just a costume. And yet it is so beautifully rendered. And there's something specifically about the face and the way the mouth is formed that even though nothing is moving, it seems to change expression and emotion just by the way the dancer moves the head. It's really fascinating.
It's mask work, right? Like it's all those things you can do with a tilt of the head. And I mean, to get the fat part out of the way, like fat suits, I would argue never look good, even when they're not being used in service of a joke. I'm thinking of like a current example of Linda Tripp on American Crime Story right now. That sort of is being used in service of a joke, but you know what I mean? Like fat suits never look good. But there's something about like the in Muppet world, like the costume looks sort of amazing and sort of real. It doesn't quite look like her arms and legs, like they don't quite look like a Muppet. They don't look human either. They're like in this weird in between uncanny valley space that actually like works really well and moves in a really interesting way that I was sort of fascinated by. That actually made it feel like not fat phobic. That made it feel like, oh, look at this beautiful pig dancing beautifully, which is a segue to what I loved about it. That like Nureyev and the dancer inside the pig costume are doing like full on actual ballet that is also comedic. And that's what I actually love about it, fat joke aside.
Yeah, we should talk about the dancer in the costume. So the pig was played by a dancer named Graham Fletcher, and he had other Muppet adjacent experience later. He was one of the people working on the Giant Audrey 2 in the movie version of Little Shop of Horrors. But he was also a dancer. He played Mr. Mistopheles in Cats on the West End, which is very much a dance role.
Like a hard. I mean, all of Cats is hard, but that's like a particularly balletic.
Yeah.
Jumping, twirling.
And of course shares a choreographer with the Muppet Show.
It's true.
It does, but not this episode. This is a Norman Maine episode. Yeah.
And Graham Fletcher also had other Muppet costume roles that'll come up.
Yeah.
Which I was a little startled at first to learn like, oh, it's a dude inside this costume. But also then picturing like a tiny ballerina trying to lug around the costume. It's like, oh, it made more sense.
But he is fully on point a couple times, which I mean, men can do, but it's a move that is more associated with women. There's also a moment when the dancer is out of the costume and its feet are attached to Nureyev's feet, and he is fully dancing and puppeteering the pig. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
I also love that, so often on the Muppet Show, they'll do a camera edit that just seems super obvious and fake. But here, there's a moment where the unmanned pig costume falls to the ground, and then suddenly there's someone inside the costume and it's getting up, and the effect worked really well for me. Like it did not seem like an obvious edit, and it was really cool.
Yeah, the way they filmed it was cool. The way they choreographed it was cool. I was really impressed by the dancer inside the puppet, and I was also impressed by Nureyev. I wasn't expecting him to necessarily be a funny physical comedian, but he was. And I know it's part of his job to express a whole range of emotions with his face and his physicality, but I wasn't expecting him to be this funny.
I just picture Juliette Prowse at home watching this and being like, why couldn't they figure out how to shoot dancing for my episode?
Well, Juliette, you should have figured out how to be funny.
Little from column A, little from column B.
Also, for you Sandy Duncan heads out there, there's a Swan Lake connection. She was the voice of the prince's mother in the animated version of Swan Lake, The Swan Princess.
So if you're playing the drinking game version of our podcast, drink once for the Sandy Duncan connection.
So something's missing in this week's UK spot.
Ugh,
Yeah.
I've got 2 wheels on my tricycle and 4 toes on each foot. I've got 6 days in my week, and up with this I will not put. I'm a bath without a plug, and I'm a handle with no jug. I'm a kiss without a hug unless you're near me. I've got 3 strings on my violin, and I'm an only twin. Something's missing, something's missing, something's
If I have any regrets about doing this podcast, it's that I can now clock a Paul Tracy number without looking it up.
From 50 yards away.
Yep, it's Paul Tracy o'clock, you guys. So this song is also from Paul Tracy's album Something Else. I actually recommend looking up the original on this one because there's something sort of lost in translation. There's a very sort of square yet da 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 in the way that the Muppets render a lot of these numbers, and it's a little more mellifluous in the Paul Tracy version. There's also a middle, I guess I would call it a B section, in which, to be a total nerd, he wrote it in the whole tone scale. So he's like, get it? Notes are missing, which I'm like, most listeners are not going to get that, Paul Tracy. This is not speculation on my part. I actually, on his YouTube page, he provided commentary on the song, and he said, "My mother lived in England, and one day she was reading the newspaper and saw the name of a racehorse. It was Something's Missing. Oh, she said, that sounds like a good title for a song for Paul."
Jesus.
So she sent me the title, and I wrote the song that goes with it. Later, she wrote to me again and told me that Something's Missing still never won a single race. The Muppets used this song and did a really good job of showing things missing. Up with this, I will not put as a reference to Churchill, who went out of his way not to end a sentence with a preposition. Man, that's a thing that plagues me. I understand that deeply. My brother Andrew played the delightful bass clarinet on this recording. He also played the Portuguese guitar here. Do you notice the whole tone scale in verse 3? That's a musical joke because, as the lyric says, there are 6 notes in a whole tone scale.
Commitment to the bit.
Cool story, bro. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's charming in its way. I'm being harsh.
I'm gonna say I didn't hate this. I am no Paul Tracy defender, but I found this kind of sweet and charming, and I really love when the wife appears. She kind of looks like him, and she has glasses like he does, and it was just like a sweet little character detail. I don't know. I just found the whole thing really, really kind of cute. I mean, obviously, it's fine to excise it. It's the UK clip, and it makes sense that this is the one that you would drop from the episode. But I don't know. It seemed no better or worse than any other like standalone Muppet song to me.
I found the song mostly dull. It's the staging for me, like which we didn't really talk about. Like, so, like all these things are literally missing. Like does he fully have half a face?
No, it's his face. On one half of his face, he has a beard. On the other half, he doesn't. But on the half he doesn't have a beard, he does have an eye. But on the bearded half, he doesn't have an eye. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's all kind of, yeah. So he looks real creepy.
Unnerving.
Yeah.
And there's a faceless Mona Lisa behind him, which is also understandably creepy.
Yeah, I just find it very creepy.
But then when his wife appears, everything
comes back. I understand. But but that takes a long time to happen. And
do we have to go on that journey with him?
Like we get it.
I agreed that it's very sweet. I mean, and I'm also more used to just hearing the song, and the visuals were new to me. But I mean, they complement each other.
It becomes very sweet, yes. But before it becomes very sweet, I was deeply creeped out by it. So the payoff didn't pay off enough for me.
They should have made more things missing so that you would have felt more satisfied when they appeared.
What else is missing? I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm with you.
He gets it back when his wife shows up, so it's fine. But it wasn't for me.
What you don't know is that for the first half of the song, he only has one testicle.
I was waiting for
that's
this.
What I was saying. You don't have to actually say it. You don't have to make the double entendre a single entendre or whatever.
Quick, let's move on to something less creepy. Oh,
wait.
Oh no.
Really can't stay.
It's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
It's cold outside.
This evening has
You're lucky
been
that you got here. I hold your hands, they're cold as ice. I'm beautiful. What's your
my
hurry?
father will be pacing that floor.
Don't be such a terrible fool. Oh, beautiful, what's the hurry?
Maybe just a little while more.
Do that and I'll unlock the door.
Wow.
Oof. Yep. That is a thing that happened on television in the real
towels.
world. Whew, okay. So where to begin? Yeah, so it's Baby It's Cold Outside, which probably doesn't need a whole lot of introduction per se. It's very infamous at this moment in time. Part of that is just a shift in context over the years. So it's a Frank Lesser song. It's not from a musical. It's just a standalone song that he wrote in 1944, and it became popular 5 years later in a movie called Neptune's Daughter. And it's not a Christmas song, but because it's about cold weather, it has sort of fallen into the Christmas song rotation over time. And the background of the song is actually kind of charming. Frank Lesser wrote it to sing with his wife at a housewarming party, like at one party, and they sang it to indicate to people that it was time to leave. And I was like, oh, I like it in that context.
Yeah, there's a need there.
Yeah. And it was such a hit that they kept getting invited to parties for years to do the song. And his wife actually felt betrayed when it popped up in a movie. She said, I felt as betrayed as if I'd caught him in bed with another woman.
Huh. She would not be his last wife.
Nope, she would not. And yeah, it was actually a replacement song in the movie Neptune's Daughter. They were originally going to use the song, I'd Like to Get You on a Slow Boat to China, but the studio censors thought that was too racy. And so they replaced it with Baby It's Cold Outside. And subsequently, the song won the 1949 Oscar for Best Song. So drink again, I guess. Yeah. Here's the thing. I hesitate to call myself a defender of this song. But I'm sort of a defender of this song. That being said, this performance understands the like now accepted modern context of the song better than...
This is the worst case scenario version of the song.
Yes.
Yeah, I am a defender of this song largely, and we'll put a link in the show notes. There's a really good essay by a woman, and we don't need to sit here and listen to me, a man, defend this song. But right there is although I'm about to do it, I guess. Skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear me defend the song. There's a read of the song where they are both knowingly flirting and playing a game.
Yes.
And or that the culture will not allow her to say, yes, I would like to spend the night. And so he is giving her plausible deniability.
Yes.
And they both know what they're doing. That is a defense of the song. However, that's not what's happening here at all.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're in a steam room in a bathhouse. Proof. Yeah, I texted a friend about this particular performance, and he's like, I have seen gay porn that was not as gay as Miss Piggy flinging herself at Rudolf Nureyev in a steam room.
In a towel.
In a towel. Yes.
He is in a towel.
And a towel that is constantly slipping as he is maneuvering around and like spreading his legs.
Uh-huh.
When I say that this would have been very important to me as a child, this is what I'm referring to.
I want to let's talk about like the design a little bit, because I actually I think there's two towels. I think for most of the number he is in a towel that is very heavily attached, and then there's a cut, and the towel that comes off, replaces it. So like there's like some actually remarkable like costume work happening just on that towel alone.
Look, if you were to say, watch this on a large TV in slow motion, you will see that he is wearing underwear.
Yes.
I assume. I'm not saying that I've tested this theory.
You're not going to just freeze frame on his leg emerging from the pool. That's where I would stop.
For science.
The other thing about the design is that, like, there's no need for there to be water on this set, but there is.
I was relieved that he didn't sing the "Hey, what's in this drink" lyric, but it would have been very Muppety to make something out of the little shallow pool that they're splashing
right? Yeah, I'm glad they cut that because it wouldn't have made any sense at all. But like,
unless they had made it make sense, unless he like points to the water and it's like, "What's in this drink?"
It's just so interesting because like, there's been episodes where I'm like, wow, they really cheaped out on that set, and then there's this where there was no reason at all to put water on the stage.
Yeah, and to have to film a steam room.
Well, the sauna I get, like the sauna is part of the joke, and also to put him in a towel, but the water itself does not need to be part of it because they don't use it. And actually, it seems like it would create a sound problem to have him splashing around. But oh well,
they managed.
I also want to mention that I learned that in the original score for this song, the two parts are referred to as wolf and mouse.
Well, that also undercuts the defense a little bit, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Yikes.
Yeah, but again, if you heard a married couple who one of whom wrote the song doing this at a party, that's totally different from like Michael Bublé and whoever the fuck on your Christmas radio.
Oof.
Yeah, it's been recorded for like 400 times. There's got to be like a randomizer somewhere where you can just like come up with like, you know, because some of those just like feel like you like pulled out of the hat. Like the one that I always think of is it's like Liza Minnelli and Alan Cumming on one of those.
I have that too.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think Darren Criss and Kurt, what the hell's his name, did it on Glee. Right. So like I've seen it done. Like there's various ways of like trying to get around it, of like let's make it two men, let's gender swap it. And I actually do appreciate that they gender swapped this one, which of course they did, right? Like of course Piggy's going to be the aggressor. I mean, it's not okay that like she is so not okay in this number. Like he is climbing the walls to get away from her.
And yet he could crack her skull between his thighs like
Wow. But he shouldn't have to, David.
No, he should not.
Wow. I mean, we understand that there's a number coming between Piggy and Rudolf Nureyev because she discusses with Kermit how excited she is for a love duet, which, yeah.
Kermit?
Yes, Miss Piggy.
May I speak with you about our duet?
What, is there something wrong with it?
Wrong? Why, it's wonderful! Oh, at last a mature and passionate love duet between me and my Kermit.
Well, you're not doing it with me.
What?
No, you're going to do it with Rudolf Nureyev.
And she runs over Kermit on her way to get to the stage, which, I mean, this is not improved by knowing that she was planning on doing this with Kermit, whom she can easily overpower.
Right.
In a mature and
we
passionate
must
love
note
duet.
that she's wearing a fetching green bathrobe over her towel during the scene with Kermit.
Oh, yes, she's looking very stylish. And yet.
And she dips him during that conversation and then drops him, which is also very funny.
I mean, Piggy's doing a great job. And Rudolf Nureyev is also doing a great job. Like, I'm glad I watched it more than once so that I could appreciate that he's having a good time acting this. Yeah, because the first time through, I definitely was, well, I was not paying attention to his face, but also I was horrified.
Much to Sam's relief, I'm sure, things get back on track classiness-wise.
You forgot your candelabra. I'll go again and keep playing. It sounds terrific.
So yeah, this is a Ralph bit. He's playing the piece Clair de Lune by Claude Debussy. It was written in 1890. It was part of a piece called Suite Bergamasque, which sounds like a thing that you'd say when you stub your toe in France. But no, Suite Bergamasque he wrote in 1890 and then revised, and it wasn't actually published until 1905. But it is in the public domain, so let's hear it one last time for the public domain. And it's a piece that has appeared in a lot of movies, like it was famously in the George Clooney Ocean's 11, underscoring the Bellagio fountain. And it was actually supposed to be in Fantasia. There was a cut scene from Fantasia featuring this piece of music. And before we get to the comedy of it all, I just want to say it is one of the most fun pieces in existence to play. So Ralph is playing, and Fozzie is trying to be helpful in his way, first by providing a missing candelabra and then trying to light it. Yeah, Muppets in Open Flame, not a favorite of ours. Very stressful.
I would like to fact check Fozzie Bear on this. He says he's going to provide a candelabra, but he only provides a candlestick.
Yes, that bothered me too.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best he could do.
Not that I want him to have more candles at his
No.
Considering he eventually takes a flamethrower to it.
It stresses me out every single time.
Yeah. I mean, I was maybe even a little more worried. I wasn't worried that Fozzie was going to actually succeed at striking a match. But the fact that it looked like he was trying, with an inch or two between him and his nose and the piano and a match in between them. I was stressed.
It was also very daring to operate a flamethrower from within a Muppet.
I assume there's some trick to it.
No, I think he has his hand. Jim Henson had his hand in the Fozzie Muppet holding the flamethrower. And actually, I have no idea which puppeteers were doing what, because we've got, I guess, Jim as Rolf and Frank as Fozzie, and then 4 additional hands that need puppeteering. So God only knows who's doing what.
Okay, so what's the difference between? I know we're not a fire podcast, but what's the difference between a flamethrower and a blowtorch? I thought it was a blowtorch.
You're right. It's a blowtorch.
Yeah,
I forgot there was such a thing as a blowtorch. I only thought of flamethrower, but you're right.
It does not change my feelings.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's the more you said it, the more I was just like, wait, flamethrowers, that's like a
weapon.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
If it had been an actual flamethrower, this would be referred to as that episode of The Muppet Show with the fucking flamethrower.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know what a flamethrower is. I thought you were going to say we're
it's
not
like
a fashion
blowtorch
podcast.
Behind a can of hairspray.
I thought you were going to say we're not a fashion podcast and then ask what it is that Fozzie's wearing around his neck. Because I guess a suit jacket wasn't working for Fozzie either, because he's just there in a little bib or a dickie. Is it a dickie?
Yeah. I think it qualifies as a dickie. Again, I have no expertise in that particular area, but...
Well, we know from last season that Sam does not approve of dickies.
So we absolutely end on a dapper note.
He's stepping out of here to breathe an atmosphere that simply reeks with class. And we trust you will excuse his dust when he steps on that gas.
Oh, I'll be there, putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, dancing in my tail.
Yeah, top hat, white tie, and tails. Irving Berlin number. We're finally into the 20th century. I mean, I guess technically, maybe it's cold outside. Brought us into the 20th century, but
did it?
Musically, if not
in some
actually.
ways, yeah. So this is an Irving Berlin song from 1935 from Top Hat, which was a Fred Astaire movie, and we will hear this again in season 4. I love this so much. weirdly stilted, accented Nureyev singing has big tacos putting on the Ritz vibes. And I'm here for it.
Not so much tacos putting on the Ritz, but I also went there. This was all I could think of.
Why don't you go where fashion sits?
And I clipped that with love because I really do love this. And I think he is having a great time.
Oh, for sure.
But he is not good at the singing or the acting.
And it's funny how he's good at the dancing, and it's clear that he is able to do all of these individual tap dancing moves, and he needs to put so much effort into it because he doesn't tap dance with the ease of a tap dancer.
Yeah.
He tap dances with the intent of a ballet dancer.
He's so enthusiastic about all of it.
Yeah, and his center of gravity isn't quite in the right place, but he's so happy to be there.
I just love a musical number that starts in the dressing room and then moves through backstage on its way to ending on stage. Like I said before, this is a Philip Casson specialty. Like, he loves to use the space of the Muppet Theater in a way that the other director doesn't. So I just think it adds so much. And I'm such a sucker for a chorus line of Muppets in tuxes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about how deeply imprinted Muppets Take Manhattan is on me. And I think that is probably why I always perk up when I see that kind of a setup.
Yep.
A little weird to have Nigel in the chorus line, and super weird to have Phenomena in the chorus line.
Yeah, that one was a real wake-up call.
But yeah, that part where he's dancing down the stairs and all the Muppets are there backstage watching him is so great.
Yeah, and just cheering him along on his journey to the stage. It's lovely.
Now, this is like the 11 billionth Fred Astaire number that we've had this season. Clearly, someone on the staff got it in their mind that was a good source for Muppet songs, and they weren't wrong.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you're thinking, like, I don't get it, why does he gun down all the Muppets at the end? That's a direct reference to how Fred Astaire does this number in Top Hat.
By shooting everyone.
So why does Fred Astaire gun down all the Muppets at the end?
Well, so it doesn't make any more sense in the context of Top Hat, except that it's just like a stylized number set on stage in front of a like stylized Eiffel Tower where Fred Astaire is dancing in front of a very large chorus of men all identically dressed in top hats and tails. This is famously the first time that Fred Astaire danced with a cane. And so the finale to the number is he uses that cane to shoot down all the different chorus boys, mimicking different kinds of guns with his taps until he finally, when the last guy dodges his make-believe gunfire, turns his cane into a fake bow and arrow and gets him that way.
Huh.
Sure.
I was hoping for a flamethrower.
Yeah. And that idea itself was actually stolen from a Broadway flop that Fred Astaire had been in previously called Smiles. So a lot of history to fake gunning down your chorus with your cane.
Goodness.
I wouldn't be me if I didn't make the pedantic note that I'm 99% sure that Nureyev is not wearing tap shoes.
I'm fine with this.
I mean, I think he is tap dancing well, and obviously everything is pre-recorded. But Gwen Verdon's off there somewhere.
Never mind that jazz. Listen, Turkey.
What? And get out of show business?
So just a tiny bit of show business to take care of before we end this episode. A single sketch. We have a vet's hospital sketch, and our patient is an adorable baby pig.
Prithee, nurse, who beeth our next patient?
Why, this little piglet, sire.
Not Piglet, Hamlet.
Oh.
Remember, we're doing Shakespeare here.
Sounds more like bacon.
Oh!
Methinks we should take our leave.
Why?
Look at the time.
Hey, the timing of the shrew.
Are you calling me a shrew?
If the shrew fits.
The Muppets love bacon jokes. And they also are paying tribute to Shakespeare because culture is the theme of this episode. Some of these jokes are really a stretch, but it is fun to watch them all look in different directions when they ask for the time. They strike a very dramatic pose. It's a good time.
Now that really offended me. I'm a student of Shakespeare.
Ah, you were a student with Shakespeare.
I can't imagine we have anything else to say about this episode, but here's your chance.
I think there are several contenders in this episode for the Of Its Time award, but I will award the best dressed of the episode to Miss Piggy and worst dressed to Sam's muscle tuxedo shirt.
My final thought is, given how successful the Muppets are with all of the different Fred Astaire numbers this season, you would think that the contemporary makers of Muppet products might look at that and say, golly gee, Fred Astaire did a lot of things in his career that the Muppets have not yet done. Maybe we should look to some of those numbers for future Muppet numbers. I don't know. Call me crazy.
You're crazy.
More Muppets in tuxedos. Let's get it.
Now, wasn't that a cultural show?
Thanks for listening to this episode of Muppeturgy. We'll be back next week to discuss the Elton John episode with our guests Mark Blankenship and Sarah D. Bunting. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Muppeturgy or on the web at Muppeturgy.com. Please spread the word and tell your friends about our podcast. Our theme music was composed and performed by Christy Bauer. Our show logo was created by Todd Brian Backus, and this episode was edited by me, David Levy.
Yay!
Most episode is going to be give you a lot.
So seeing as how... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to take it to feet, so you should finish your thought.
we can't stay away.